Welcome to A Mason's Work, the podcast where we review Masonic symbols and illustrate how they can be used to solve problems in everyday life. With your host, Brian Mattox, a proud member of the Craftsman Online Media Network.
So looking across the entire range of the compasses that we've talked about over the course of the last several episodes, it's easy to see that the compasses are a powerful tool for helping you become aware of and identify, and even at some level, create boundaries and limit behaviors and essentially determine what's in scope and what's out of scope and all that good stuff. But that whole process is not something that the compasses, while they are awesome at that, at creating that line or helping you notice those sort of boundary violations, they're not necessarily great at helping you create good answers to them, right? So you'll notice that you cross the line, but you'll very likely need other tools to determine how to negotiate those lines moving forward from a systemic level, from a behavioral level, from a relational level. You're going to need your other toolkits. You're going to need rhetoric to help explain to others kind of what's going on. You're going to need your 24-inch gauge to essentially help you determine what your 24 hours in the day look like in terms of the commitments you've made. You're going to need, your logic and your arithmetic to help you essentially put limits and determine consumption rates and all that kind of stuff. The compasses essentially is the line, and it's the noticing of those violations, but it has no creative capacity. So you're going to want to bring an additional sort of creative capacity to the table when it comes to, or a generative capacity to the table when it comes to how can you implement this in your everyday life. And the personal sort of anecdote for the week here is, counting impulses. So I started counting impulses on a regular basis. How many times a day did I X or Y or Z? Did I desire for sweets, or did I desire for television, or did I desire to doom scroll, or, sex or drugs or rock and roll or any of the things? And then how many times in that same day did I essentially feed those desires, those impulses? That helped me create essentially what my boundaries look like, right? So if I have a impulse satisfaction rate of 20%, as it goes up, I can say, hey, listen, I am, spinning out here. Or as it went down, I was able to say, maybe I am over constraining myself and setting myself up for essentially a bender later on, or what have you. A period where I just refuse all systems and structures. So when I started working on this system, I realized that there were a good number of impulses that would come up, and they had a root cause. I was, for example, desirous of sweets every time I ran into a piece of work in my workplace that was like, ambiguous. How do I solve this problem? I didn't have a good answer right out of the gate, so I would just walk over to, and get a thing of Cheerios and eat some Cheerios. Turns out that's probably not a great way to move the work forward, and also counterintuitive to, trying to keep a thinner waistline. So that noticing process helped essentially point the finger at some other things going on that I was better able to kind of go after as root cause. I can't tell you everything's perfect right now, but I can tell you that the noticing process of applying the compasses has become an important part of my diagnosis, my self-diagnostic process for evaluating what's going on. Am I feeling X or Y or Z more often than I would expect? Why is that? What's the root cause? And the compasses is all part of that. It is one of the first lines of defense when it comes to really understanding how to become a better version of yourself. So I recommend you break that out. I think you'll find it useful. But again, understand that it can't solve the problems. It helps you notice. So if you get to a point where you're like, hey, I've noticed these things, but I don't know what to do next, find us in Discord. We are building a Mason's Work community. And if you have questions about how to get involved, just reach out to me directly. I should be easy to get at masonswork.com. Thanks.
The views represented in this podcast are those of the speaker alone and are not representative of any grand or subordinate lodge.
Hi, Brian here. I wanted to thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any suggestions or guidance for further episodes you'd like to see or hear, whatever the case may be, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at masonswork.com, and we will try and incorporate your suggestions into a future recording. Thanks.
Freemasonry teaches us that the true work is within, a lifelong journey of reflection, discipline, and discovery. At A Mason's Work, we help Masons bring out their best selves through meaningful self-inquiry and symbolic practice. From personal reflection to lodge engagement, we offer tools that turn symbols into action. Visit us at amasonswork.com. The work is within. The time is now.